Ma'am, don't move. The words land sharp against her back, louder than the soft jazz playing through hidden ceiling speakers, louder than the quiet hum of credit cards sliding through polished machines, louder even than the rhythm of her own breath as Ava Brooks pauses mid-step, one hand still resting lightly on the strap of her bag, her fingers steady despite the sudden shift in the air around her, because she knows this moment. She has lived inside it before. The way conversations die without warning, the way eyes turn all at once, measuring, deciding, reducing her to something smaller than she is, something easier to accuse than to understand, and slowly, deliberately, she turns her head just enough to see the store manager standing behind her, lips tight, chin lifted, a practiced kind of authority that comes from believing you belong everywhere you stand. Unlike Ava, who has learned to move through spaces like this with quiet precision, aware of every glance, every unspoken question, every subtle shift in tone that says you don't quite fit here, and still she had walked in anyway, past glass displays glowing under soft white lights, past shelves lined with items that cost more than most people's monthly rent, past the kind of silence that only exists where money speaks louder than words, because she had every right to be there, every right to choose what she wanted, every right to exist without explanation, and yet here she is, stopped before the exit, the weight of suspicion pressing in from every side as a few customers begin to slow their steps, pretending not to stare while clearly watching, phones already lifting just slightly, ready to capture whatever happens next, because moments like this always draw a crowd, always become something more than they should be, and the manager's voice comes again, tighter this time. You need to come with me. As if it's already settled, as if Ava has already been judged, and Ava doesn't respond right away, doesn't rush, doesn't shrink. She simply inhales, steady and controlled, her heartbeat even, her posture calm, because panic would only confirm what they think they see, and she refuses to give them that, refuses to become the version of her they've already decided exists. And somewhere near the entrance, the door chime rings again as two uniformed officers step inside, their presence shifting the atmosphere instantly, turning curiosity into tension, turning assumption into something heavier, something official, and Ava feels it, the moment the situation crosses an invisible line. But still she doesn't move, doesn't explain, doesn't apologize, she just stands there in the center of it all, composed in a way that unsettles more than any protest ever could, because silence, in moments like this, isn't weakness, it's control, and as one of the officers approaches, his footsteps measured, his voice firm, "Ma'am, we're going to need you to cooperate." Ava finally lifts her gaze fully to meet his, and there is something in her eyes that doesn't match the story forming around her, something steady, something unshaken, something that suggests this moment isn't what it seems, not even close, and for the first time, there's a flicker of hesitation in the air, brief, almost invisible, but real enough to be felt, like the first crack in something that looked unbreakable just seconds ago. Officer Hayes stops just short of her, close enough that his presence feels intentional, controlled, practiced, the kind of distance that signals authority without needing to raise his voice. And yet there is something in the way his eyes move over her that is not neutral, not curious, but already certain, as if he has stepped into a story that has already been written for him, and all he has to do is follow the script. "We received a report," he says, each word measured, careful, but carrying weight, "that you may have taken merchandise without paying." And the word "may" hangs there for a fraction of a second before disappearing under the pressure of everything else that surrounds it. Because no one here hears uncertainty, they hear accusation, and Ava notices the shift immediately, the way the small circle of people around them tightens just a little more, the way someone whispers something under their breath, the way a phone lifts higher, no longer pretending, now openly recording, capturing her stillness as if it is evidence of something, and she does not react to any of it, not to the stares, not to the quiet judgment, not even to the manager who steps forward again, eager now that authority has arrived. "I saw her," the woman insists, her voice sharp with certainty that seems to grow stronger the more people are listening. She picked it up and walked straight out, and Ava turns her gaze toward her, not angry, not defensive, just looking, really looking, in a way that makes the manager hesitate for the briefest moment. because there is no guilt in that expression, no panic, no scrambling explanation, just a calm that does not fit the narrative being built around her. And that calm unsettles people more than anything else could. Ma'am. Hayes continues, his tone firmer now, less patient, as if her silence is becoming an inconvenience. I am going to ask you one more time to cooperate. And there it is again, the assumption that she has not been cooperating, even though she has not resisted, has not moved, has not done anything except stand exactly where they told her to. And Ava lets the silence stretch just a little longer, long enough for the tension to become uncomfortable, long enough for the crowd to lean in without realizing it. And then, slowly, she shifts her weight and turns fully to face him, her movements unhurried, deliberate, controlled down to the smallest detail, as if she understands something no one else in this room does, as if she knows exactly where this moment is going while everyone else is still reacting to it. And when she finally speaks, her voice is even, clear, steady in a way that cuts through the noise without needing to be loud. Are you detaining me, officer? She asks, not confrontational, not emotional, just precise. And the question lands differently than anything that has been said so far, because it does not belong to the script they were following. It does not match the role they have assigned to her. And for a split second, Hayes pauses, just enough for the shift to be felt, just enough for the balance of the moment to tilt ever so slightly, and Ava sees it. That tiny fracture in certainty, that brief hesitation. That tells her everything she needs to know, but she does not press it. Not yet. She simply holds his gaze, steady and unflinching, while the world around them waits for what happens next. The question lingers in the air longer than it should, stretching across the polished floors and glass displays, slipping into the silence that no one seems ready to break, because it is not the kind of question they expected from her, not from someone they have already decided is guilty. And Officer Hayes feels it. The shift, subtle but undeniable. The way control begins to slip just slightly from his grasp. Not enough for anyone to call it out, but enough that he has to adjust, recalibrate, regain the narrative. We are just trying to resolve a situation. He replies, choosing his words carefully now, his tone tightening as he avoids the direct answer. And Ava notices that too. The way he sidesteps, the way certainty becomes caution, and around them the crowd leans in closer, drawn not just by the accusation anymore, but by the tension, the sense that something is not unfolding the way it usually does. Because usually people in her position rush to explain, rush to defend, rush to prove they belong. But Ava does none of that. She stands there grounded, her presence steady in a way that feels almost out of place in a moment designed to make her smaller. And the manager grows impatient, her voice rising just enough to cut through the hesitation. She is avoiding the question, she says, as if that alone is proof, as if silence must mean guilt, and a few heads nod in quiet agreement. Because it is easier to believe that than to question what they are seeing, easier to follow the story than to rewrite it. And Hayes exhales slowly, then steps a fraction closer, closing the distance just enough to reassert himself. Ma'am, if you have nothing to hide, then opening your bag will clear this up right now. And there it is again, the assumption wrapped in politeness, the suggestion that innocence must always be proven on demand. And Ava lets the words settle before she responds, her gaze never leaving his, her expression unchanged, calm but not passive, composed but not submissive. That is not how this works, she says quietly, and the simplicity of it lands heavier than any raised voice could have, because it challenges not just the moment but the structure of it, the expectation that she should comply without question. And for a second time, Hayes pauses, longer this time, long enough for uncertainty to ripple outward, and someone in the crowd shifts uncomfortably. Another lowers their phone slightly, as if unsure whether they are witnessing what they thought they were. And Ava senses the shift again, that subtle unraveling. But she does not rush it. She does not push. She simply waits, letting the weight of her words do their work, letting the silence expand until it belongs to her instead of them. And then, with deliberate calm, she reaches for her bag, not quickly, not defensively, but with a measured precision that draws every eye, every breath, every expectation into that single movement. And for a moment, it looks like she is about to comply, like the story is about to return to its familiar path. But instead of opening the bag, Her hand continues past it, slipping into the inside pocket of her coat, and the motion is small, almost unremarkable, yet something about it changes the air instantly. Something about the confidence in that movement, the certainty, the lack of hesitation, makes Hayes straighten just slightly. His instincts catching up to something his mind has not yet named, and Ava's fingers close around something unseen, something that carries weight far beyond what anyone here expects. And as she begins to draw it out, slowly, deliberately, the entire room seems to hold its breath without realizing it, suspended on the edge of a moment that is about to become something none of them were prepared for. Whatever she is holding does not reveal itself all at once, and that is what changes everything. Because the expectation had been simple, predictable, a receipt, an excuse, something ordinary that would confirm what they already believed, but instead her hand emerges slowly, controlled, deliberate, and between her fingers is a slim leather wallet, worn just enough to suggest it is used often, but maintained with care, and, for a brief second, confusion flickers across the manager's face, because this is not how these moments usually unfold, not how they are supposed to go, and Ava does not rush to explain it, does not open it immediately. She simply holds it there at chest level, steady, letting the weight of the unknown settle over the room. And Officer Hayes watches closely now, his posture shifting almost imperceptibly. The certainty from moments ago no longer as solid as it was, replaced by something more cautious, more alert, as if his instincts are beginning to register that this situation is no longer moving in a direction he controls, and the crowd senses it too. The subtle change, the quiet recalibration of energy, because anticipation has replaced judgment, and silence has become something heavier, something charged. And then, with emotion so smooth it feels rehearsed, Ava flips the wallet open, not toward the crowd, not toward the manager, but directly toward Hayes, positioning it so only he can see clearly at first, and the reaction is immediate, though small, so small that anyone not paying close attention might miss it. A tightening around his eyes, a fraction of a step back, the kind of instinctive response that does not come from confusion, but from recognition, and Ava holds it there, unwavering, giving him just enough time to process what he is looking at, not rushing him, not forcing the moment, just allowing it to land fully, and for the first time since he walked into the store. Hayes does not speak right away, his voice caught somewhere between authority and uncertainty, because what he sees does not match the story he has been acting inside of. It does not align with the assumptions that brought him here, and that disconnect creates a pause that stretches just long enough for the room to feel it, for the tension to shift direction, for the invisible line of control to move away from him and toward her. And the manager notices it, her confidence faltering as she looks between them, searching for confirmation that she has not made a mistake, that this is still what she thought it was. But Hayes does not give her that reassurance, not immediately, because his focus is fixed now, locked onto the badge displayed before him, the official seal catching the overhead light in a way that makes it impossible to dismiss, impossible to ignore. And Ava finally lowers the wallet just slightly, not hiding it, not revealing it to everyone yet, just enough to break the moment without ending it. And when she speaks again, her voice is calm, steady, carrying a quiet authority that does not need to be raised to be felt. "Would you like to clarify your question, officer?" she asks, and the words are simple, but they land with a precision that shifts the entire dynamic, because now it is no longer about what she has done, it is about what he is doing, and for the first time, the room is not watching her to see what she will say next, they are watching him. The silence does not break all at once, it fractures, slowly, unevenly, like something no one knows how to repair, because Officer Hayes is no longer standing in the same position he was seconds ago, not physically, but in every other way that matters, his shoulders slightly less rigid, his voice no longer ready at the front of his throat, and the badge, still fresh in his mind, refuses to fit into the version of events he walked in believing. And for a moment, he searches for something familiar to hold on to, procedure, control, authority, but the ground has shifted beneath all of that, and Ava does not move to help him, does not explain, does not soften what has already been revealed. She simply watches, composed, allowing the weight of the moment to settle exactly where it belongs. And the manager feels it too, the sudden absence of certainty, The way her earlier confidence now hangs awkwardly in the air, unsupported, and she steps forward again, but this time there is hesitation in her voice. "Officer," she still needs to show what is in the bag. She insists, though the words sound less convincing even to her own ears, because something about the dynamic has changed in a way she cannot fully understand. And Hayes finally exhales, slow, controlled, as if recalibrating in real time, his gaze flicking briefly to the crowd, to the phone still raised, to the eyes waiting for resolution. And when he speaks again, his tone is different, not softer, but more measured, more careful. "Ma'am," he begins, then stops, just for a fraction of a second, correcting himself before continuing. "Ms. Brooks," and the use of her name lands like a quiet acknowledgement that the situation is no longer what it was, that he has adjusted, even if only slightly. And Ava notices, of course she notices, but she does not react outwardly. She simply lets him continue, because now he is the one choosing his words, the one aware of how they might be heard. And that shift is not lost on anyone watching. "If there has been a misunderstanding," he says, "we can resolve this quickly." And the phrasing is deliberate, careful to avoid blame, careful to step away from accusation without fully admitting error, and Ava tilts her head just slightly, considering him, not dismissing, not accepting, simply observing. And then she lowers the wallet completely, closing it with a soft click that echoes louder than it should in the quiet space. And for a moment it seems like she might speak again, might clarify, might offer the explanation everyone is waiting for. But instead she does something else entirely. She lifts her gaze past him, scanning the room, taking in the faces, the phones, the shifting expressions that no longer carry the same certainty they did minutes ago. And when she finally speaks, her voice is calm, steady. But now there is something else beneath it, something unmistakable, something that does not ask for permission. "No one asked if I needed help," she says, not loudly, but clearly enough that it reaches beyond Hayes, beyond the manager, into the space where the crowd stands listening, and the words land differently than anything before them, because they are not defensive, not reactive, they are observational, precise, and they force a different kind of awareness into the room, one that has nothing to do with the bag, nothing to do with the accusation, and everything to do with what came before it. And for the first time, the attention shifts completely, not just away from what she is holding, but toward what everyone else has done. And in that shift, the balance is no longer uncertain. It is decided, even if no one has said it out loud yet. The words settle into the room like something heavier than sound, something that does not disappear once spoken. And for a moment no one moves, not the manager, not the customers, not even Officer Hayes, because what Ava has just said does not belong to the version of events they were following. It does not fit inside the neat explanation they were expecting to reach, and that discomfort begins to spread quietly, shifting posture, lowering phones, softening expressions that had once been so certain. And Hayes feels it most of all, the way control has slipped beyond recovery, not through force, not through resistance, but through something far more difficult to counter, clarity. And he straightens slightly, drawing in a slow breath as if preparing to speak, to redirect, to regain some form of authority. But when he does speak, his voice no longer carries the same edge it did before. "Ms. Brooks," he says again, more carefully this time. "If there has been a misunderstanding, then we can address it appropriately." And the phrasing lands differently now, no longer an instruction, no longer a demand, but something closer to an offer, though even that feels uncertain. And Ava watches him for a moment, her expression unchanged, her presence steady in a way that continues to anchor the entire space around her. And then, without hurry, she reaches down and picks up her bag, the same bag that had been the center of everything just minutes ago, and the movement draws attention. Again, but this time it is not suspicion that follows it. It is anticipation, quiet, focused, as if everyone understands that whatever happens next will define how this moment ends. And Ava does not rush it, does not open the bag immediately. She simply holds it in one hand while her other hand adjusts the strap on her shoulder, a small, almost ordinary gesture that contrasts sharply with the tension still lingering in the air. And then she looks at Hayes once more, not confrontational, not dismissive, just present, fully aware, and she speaks, her voice even, measured, carrying the same quiet authority that has reshaped the entire situation. You responded to a report, she says, acknowledging the process without conceding to it. But you did not verify it before escalating. And the statement is not an accusation, not delivered with anger, but with precision, as if each word has been chosen for its exact weight. And Hayes does not interrupt, does not challenge, because he knows now that anything he says will be measured against what has already been revealed. And Ava continues, you did not ask a single question before assuming intent. And somewhere behind him, the manager shifts uncomfortably, her earlier confidence now replaced with something quieter, something uncertain, and Ava finally glances toward her, just briefly, before returning her focus to Hayes. And then, with the same calm control that has defined every movement she has made, she unzips the bag and opens it, not as an act of compliance, not as submission, but as closure, and inside, neatly arranged, are the items she had selected, each one accompanied by a printed receipt, folded carefully, visible without needing explanation. And for a moment, no one speaks, because the simplicity of it leaves no room for interpretation, no space for doubt. And Ava closes the bag again just as smoothly, the sound of the zipper final, decisive. And when she looks up, the room feels different, quieter, not because the tension is gone, but because it has changed form. And this time, no one is looking at her with suspicion. They are looking at her with something else entirely, something closer to understanding, though it comes too late to change what has already happened. And Ava lets the silence hold for just a second longer before she speaks one final time, her voice steady, unraised, but unmistakably firm. Next time, she says, meeting Hayes' eyes directly, start with a question. The zipper's soft click lingers longer than it should, not because of the sound itself, but because of what it represents, a quiet ending to something that never should have begun. And yet no one moves to fill the silence. Not immediately, because the weight of what just unfolded settles unevenly across the room, pressing into the space where certainty used to live. And Ava does not rush away, does not turn her back or reclaim the moment with anything dramatic. She simply stands there for a breath longer than expected, grounded, composed, as if allowing everyone present the time to understand what just shifted. And Officer Hayes feels it most of all. The absence of control, the awareness that this is no longer a situation he can resolve with a standard response. And for the first time since entering the store, he clears his throat, not to assert authority, but to find his voice again. Ms. Brooks, he begins, and this time there is no hesitation in using her name, only a careful respect that was not there before. I apologize for the inconvenience. And the words are measured, formal, but they carry something more than procedure now. Something closer to acknowledgement, though not yet complete. And Ava watches him, her expression unchanged, not dismissing the apology, but not absorbing it either, simply letting it exist as it is. And behind him, the manager shifts again, her earlier sharpness gone entirely, replaced with something uncertain, almost fragile. I thought, she starts, but the sentence does not finish, because even she seems to realize that whatever justification she might offer would sound smaller now, insufficient in the face of what has already been revealed. And Ava glances toward her briefly, not with anger, not with judgment, but with a kind of quiet clarity that makes the unfinished words unnecessary. And around them, the crowd begins to dissolve, slowly, awkwardly, people lowering their phones, turning away, retreating into the normal rhythm of the store as if nothing had happened, though the tension still lingers in the air, subtle but undeniable. And Ava finally shifts her weight, adjusting the strap of her bag once more, a small, grounding motion, before taking a single step forward, passing Hayes without hesitation, without waiting for permission. And he steps aside, instinctively, not out of command, but out of understanding, creating space where moments ago there had been none. And as she moves toward the exit, the sound of her footsteps is steady, unhurried, echoing softly against the polished floor. And just before she reaches the door, she pauses, not turning fully, just enough to let her voice carry back into the space she is leaving behind. Accountability does not begin after the mistake, she says, calm, precise, each word landing with quiet intention. It begins before it. and the statement settles into the room in a way that no one interrupts, no one challenges, because there is nothing left to argue. And then she continues forward, the door opening with a soft chime as natural light spills in from outside, cutting through the artificial glow of the store. And for a moment, she stands at the threshold, between what just happened and everything that comes next, before stepping out into the afternoon, leaving behind a silence that no one inside quite knows how to break. And behind her, Hayes remains where he is, watching the door close, the reflection of his own image faint in the glass, as the reality of the moment settles fully into place. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable in a way that will not fade quickly, no matter how much the room returns to normal. Outside, the air feels different, not because it is quieter, but because it does not carry the weight of assumption, and Ava steps onto the sidewalk with the same steady pace she held inside. The late afternoon sun reflecting off passing cars, the distant hum of traffic grounding the moment in something ordinary again. Yet beneath that normal rhythm, there is still a trace of what just happened, not visible, not spoken, but present in the way her shoulders remain squared, in the way her breath stays measured, because moments like that do not disappear the second you walk away from them. They linger, not as fear, but as memory, as awareness, and she adjusts the strap of her bag once more as she moves forward, blending into the flow of people who pass by without knowing, without seeing, without realizing how quickly a situation can shift when assumption meets truth. And behind her, through the glass storefront, Officer Hayes is still standing where she left him, though now his posture has changed, less rigid, more reflective, his gaze no longer scanning for control, but fixed somewhere inward, replaying the sequence of events with a clarity that was not there before. And the manager stands a few feet away, her arms folded loosely now, not in authority but in uncertainty, her earlier confidence replaced by something quieter, something that does not know how to justify what just occurred, and neither of them speaks at first, because there is nothing immediate to say that would restore what has already been lost. And Hayes finally exhales, long and slow, as if releasing the last remnants of the role he stepped into when he first arrived. And when he turns toward the manager, his voice is different, not sharp, not commanding, but deliberate. Next time, he says, echoing the words that still linger in the space. You verify before you call it in. And the statement is not harsh, but it carries weight, the kind that does not need to be raised to be understood. And the manager nods, quickly, almost instinctively, though her eyes drift toward the door, where Ava exited, as if still trying to reconcile what she thought she saw with what actually happened. And outside, Ava reaches the corner of the block, pausing briefly as the crosswalk signal counts down in bright white numbers, 5, 4, 3, and she stands there among strangers, just another person waiting to cross, indistinguishable from anyone else, and yet entirely unchanged by what just took place. Because her composure was never about proving something in that store, it was about knowing something long before she walked into it. And as the signal shifts and she steps forward, the city continues around her without interruption, cars passing, conversations blending into the background, life moving as it always does. But there is a quiet certainty in her stride now, not new, not created by the moment, but reinforced by it. And somewhere behind her, in a store that has already begun to return to its routine, the echo of that moment remains, not loud, not visible, but present in a way that will shape what comes next, even if no one says it out loud. By the time Ava reaches the opposite side of the street, the city has already moved on, the moment behind her dissolving into traffic noise and passing conversations. But she does not rush, does not check her phone, does not look back, because she does not need to confirm what she already knows. And yet her mind replays it anyway, not with anger, not with frustration, but with a quiet clarity that sharpens every detail, the tone of the manager's voice, the way the officer avoided her question, the exact second the balance shifted, and she exhales slowly, not to release tension, but to steady something deeper, something that has nothing to do with the store and everything to do with patterns she has seen before. And as she continues down the block, her steps even, deliberate, she reaches the entrance of a tall federal building, its glass doors reflecting the late afternoon light in clean, sharp lines. the American flag hanging still above the entryway, and without hesitation she walks inside. The air cooler, quieter, structured in a way that feels familiar, controlled, and as she crosses the lobby, the security officer at the front desk looks up, his posture shifting immediately as recognition replaces routine. "Good afternoon, Your Honor," he says, his tone respectful, practiced, and Ava gives a small nod. Nothing exaggerated, just acknowledgement, as she continues past, her presence here unquestioned, unchallenged, moving through a space where her identity is not assumed but known. And as the elevator doors slide open, she steps inside, alone, the mirrored walls reflecting her image back at her, steady, composed, unchanged, and for a moment, she watches her own reflection, not searching for anything, just confirming what has always been there. That same quiet control, that same measured stillness that does not come from the absence of pressure, but from knowing how to stand within it. And the elevator begins to rise, the soft hum filling the silence as the numbers tick upward, floor by floor, until the doors open again onto a hallway lined with dark wood panels and brass nameplates, each one polished, precise, and she walks forward, heels soft against the carpet, until she reaches a door near the end, her name engraved clearly, unmistakably, and she pauses there for just a second, her hand resting lightly against the handle, as if marking the transition between one world and another, before pushing it open and stepping inside. And as the door closes behind her, the noise of the city fades completely, replaced by a stillness that carries a different kind of weight, one not built on assumption, but on responsibility. And Ava sets her bag down on the desk, the same bag that had been questioned just minutes ago, now resting in a space where no one would think to challenge it. And she takes a seat, her posture straight, composed, her gaze settling forward as the moment finally completes its arc, not with triumph, not with vindication, but with something quieter, something more enduring, the simple, undeniable reality of who she is. And outside, far from this office, the ripple of what happened continues in ways no one there fully understands yet. Because some moments do not end when you walk away from them. They follow, they shift, they return, and somewhere, in a store that has already resumed its routine, a lesson has been left behind, waiting to be recognized. The office is quiet in a way that does not feel empty, but intentional, every sound softened by design. The faint hum of air conditioning, the distant echo of footsteps in the hallway beyond the door, and Ava sits still for a moment, her hands resting lightly on the desk, not moving to begin anything immediately, because she understands the value of stillness after motion, the importance of letting one moment fully close before stepping into the next. And her eyes drift briefly to the window, where the city stretches out below, traffic flowing in steady lines, people moving with purpose, unaware of the small collision of assumptions and truth that unfolded just blocks away. And she exhales slowly, not as relief, but as recalibration, grounding herself in the present, in this space where her role is clear, defined not by perception but by responsibility. And after a beat, she reaches for the folder placed neatly at the edge of her desk, the case waiting inside, already prepared, already structured. And as she opens it, the familiar weight of her work settles in, lines of text, documented, facts, arguments laid out with precision, all of it demanding the same clarity she carried into that store, the same discipline, the same refusal to accept anything at face value without question. And she begins to read, her focus sharp, unwavering, as if the earlier moment has not disrupted her at all, as if it has only reinforced the necessity of what she does here. And time moves differently in this space, measured not in minutes, but in decisions, in careful consideration, in the quiet responsibility of understanding what is right before declaring what is just. And somewhere in the building, a clerk knocks lightly on her door before stepping in, placing another file on the corner of her desk. "This just came in, Your Honor," he says, his tone respectful, familiar, and Ava nods once, acknowledging without breaking her rhythm, her attention already shifting between documents, absorbing details with a practiced ease that comes from years of doing exactly this. And as the clerk exits, closing the door behind him, the room returns to its steady silence, and Ava continues, page after page, her mind aligning facts, weighing context, filtering through layers of information in the same way she filtered through the assumptions thrown at her earlier, not reacting, not rushing, simply observing until the truth reveals itself. And outside, the sun begins to lower, casting longer shadows across the city. The day moving forward as it always does, but inside this office, something has already settled into place. Not just the work before her, but the quiet understanding that the world she moves through will not always recognize her before judging her. And yet that does not change who she is, does not alter the way she carries herself, does not shift the standard she holds. And as she sets one file aside and reaches for the next, her expression remains calm, focused, unshaken, because for Ava, authority is not something she turns on or off depending on the room she is in. It is something constant, something earned, something that exists whether it is acknowledged or not. And in this space, at this desk, it does not need to be proven, it simply is. The rhythm of the room settles into something precise, almost measured, as Ava turns another page, her fingers moving with quiet familiarity across the edges of the document. And yet beneath that steady motion, there is a subtle shift, not distraction, not hesitation, but awareness, the kind that lingers after a moment that refuses to be dismissed. And as she pauses briefly, her eyes lifting from the text to the stillness of the office, she does not see the store again, not exactly, but she recognizes the pattern it represents, the quiet assumption that arrives before evidence, the confidence people carry when they believe they already understand what they are looking at. And she exhales softly, not with frustration, but with clarity, because this is not new, not unfamiliar. It is simply another variation of something she has navigated for years, and yet today it intersected differently, sharper, more public, more revealing in the way it unfolded. And she reaches for her pen, making a small notation in the margin of the case before her, precise, deliberate, each word placed exactly where it belongs, because here, in this space, details matter, context matters. The difference between assumption and fact is not subtle, it is everything. And as she continues reading, her mind aligns the information before her with a practiced discipline, filtering out noise, focusing only on what can be supported, what can be proven, what can stand without interpretation. And somewhere down the hall, a door closes, the sound faint but distinct, grounding the moment in the present, reminding her that this building, this system, is built on the very principles that were overlooked just hours ago. And the contrast is not lost on her, but she does not dwell on it. She does not allow it to pull her away from the work in front of her, because for Ava, the response to moments like that is not reaction, it is consistency. It is continuing to operate with the same standard regardless of the environment. And she turns another page, her posture unchanged, her focus unwavering, as the details of the case sharpen into something clearer, something more defined. And as she reaches the final section, she pauses again, not out of uncertainty, but to ensure that nothing has been overlooked, no assumption left unchecked, no detail dismissed too quickly. And when she finally sets the file down, her decision is not dramatic, not announced. It is simply formed, solid, grounded in the quiet certainty that comes from careful consideration. And she leans back slightly in her chair, her gaze drifting once more toward the window, where the light has softened into early evening, casting long reflections across the glass. And for a moment, she allows herself to sit in that stillness, not thinking about what happened earlier as something separate, but as something connected, a reminder that the same principles she applies here must exist everywhere, not just in rooms like this, not just within structured systems, but in every interaction, every decision, every assumption made or avoided. And as she reaches for the next file, her movements remain steady, unchanged, because nothing about who she is depends on where she stands. Whether in a courtroom, an office, or a store, the standard remains the same. And that is something no moment, no assumption, no misunderstanding can alter. The light outside has shifted fully now, the city settling into that quiet transition between day and night, where movement slows just enough to be noticed. And inside the office, the glow from the desk lamp replaces the fading sun, casting a steady, focused warmth across the documents spread before Ava. And she does not rush to turn on additional lights, does not interrupt the balance of the space. because she understands how to work within what is already present, how to adjust without disrupting. And as she reviews the final pages of the next case, her attention remains precise, filtering through arguments that attempt to frame assumption as fact, language that tries to soften certainty into ambiguity, and she recognizes it instantly. The subtle ways narratives are shaped, the quiet manipulations that can alter perception if left unchallenged, and her pen moves again, marking, correcting, refining, each motion small but intentional, because clarity is not something that appears on its own. It is built, piece by piece, through discipline and attention. And as she sets the pen down, she leans back slightly, her gaze lifting once more toward the window, where the city lights have begun to flicker on, one by one, each window a small reflection of lives unfolding beyond her view. And for a moment, the contrast settles in, the difference between a system designed to seek truth and a world that often moves too quickly to question its own conclusions. And she allows that thought to exist without resistance, not as frustration, but as awareness, because it does not weaken her, it sharpens her, reminds her of the necessity of what she does. And somewhere beyond the walls of this building, the ripple of the earlier moment continues in quiet ways, in conversations, in second thoughts, in the subtle reconsideration of what was assumed too quickly. And Ava does not need to witness those ripples to know they exist. She understands the weight of moments like that, how they linger, how they reshape perception in ways that are not always immediate but are rarely insignificant. And she reaches forward, closing the file in front of her with a soft, definitive motion, signaling not just the end of the review, but the completion of something more than paperwork, something rooted in the same principle that guided her through that store, the refusal to accept anything without understanding it fully. And as she organizes the documents neatly into a stack, aligning edges with quiet precision, there is no urgency in her movements, no lingering tension, only a steady continuation of purpose. And when she finally stands, stepping away from the desk, her posture remains the same as it was earlier, composed, grounded, unaffected by the environment around her. Because for Ava, consistency is not something she performs, it is something she embodies. And as she moves toward the door, reaching for the light switch, she pauses for just a fraction of a second, her hand hovering, as if marking the end of this day not by its events, but by what remains unchanged despite them. And then the room dims, the soft glow fading as she steps out into the hallway, closing the door behind her, leaving the office in stillness once more, a space where clarity was upheld, where assumptions did not stand, and where the quiet strength she carries continues to define every step she takes, regardless of where those steps lead next. The hallway outside her office is quieter now, the usual movement reduced to a few distant footsteps and the soft murmur of voices fading behind closed doors. And Ava walks through it with the same steady pace she carried all day, not hurried, not delayed, simply present in each step. And as she reaches the elevator, the doors open without pause, as if the building itself recognizes her rhythm, and she steps inside, turning slightly as the doors close, the reflection in the mirrored panel, catching her once more, not as something to examine, but as something already understood. And the descent is smooth, floor numbers lowering one by one, marking the quiet transition from responsibility back into the open world. And when the doors part again, the lobby greets her with the same calm order it held earlier, though the light has changed, softer now, evening settling fully into place. And the security officer looks up again, offering a respectful nod that Ava returns with the same quiet acknowledgement, no more, no less, because respect, like everything else she carries, is something she meets with consistency, not performance. And as she steps outside, the air is cooler, the city alive in a different way now, headlights stretching into long lines, voices blending into the background hum of night. And for a moment she pauses on the steps, not out of hesitation, but to feel the shift, the transition from one space to another. And she looks out over the street, not searching, not reflecting, simply observing, taking in the world as it moves around her, unchanged in its pace, in its assumptions, in its quiet patterns that repeat themselves in ways both small and significant. And she knows those patterns will not disappear overnight, that moments like the one she experienced earlier will continue to exist in different places, in different forms, but always rooted in the same absence of pause, the same failure to question before concluding, and yet that understanding does not weigh her down. It steadies her, reinforces something deeper, something that does not depend on the world being different in order for her to remain the same. And as she steps down onto the sidewalk, merging once again into the flow of people, there is no need for acknowledgement, no need for recognition, because who she is does not require validation from the spaces she moves through. It exists independently, quietly, firmly, in every action, every word, every silence she chooses to hold. And somewhere, far behind her, the echo of that earlier moment continues to ripple outward, not in noise, not in confrontation, but in something subtler, a shift in awareness that will surface later, in hesitation, in reconsideration, in the simple act of asking a question before making a judgment. And Ava walks forward into the night with the same calm certainty she carried into the day, her steps even, her presence steady, leaving behind not a scene, not a statement, but something more enduring, a reminder that authority is not proven in the moment it is challenged. It is revealed in the way it is carried long before that moment ever begins. And as the city lights reflect softly around her, she continues on, unchanged, unshaken, and entirely certain of exactly who she is.